Andrew, Sadiq Khan is under fire for promoting adverts for what on the London Underground?
Well, it is extraordinary. I saw this advert. It's an Islamic bank which has a controversial, let me put it that way, preacher, and they're burning dollars and so on and so forth, because Islamic banks, they don't allow interest and so on and so forth. So that's at the same time that you have a comedian, you might remember, who wasn't allowed to advertise his hot dog comedy tour with a hot dog because it breached their rules about junk food. So he ended up with a cucumber, which is far more suggestive. So he worked on that basis. And also, I think an artisan cheese also got banned, but you can have these controversial preachers burning dollars, and that's okay.
Well, I went to quite a nice play where they had, it was about a wedding, and it was like this immersive experience play. They got banned because of the cake, but the cake was it was made of wood. Imagine wooden cakes are no good, Peter.
Well, you know, but I've got to go. I think this is not just controversial preacher. This is a hate preacher. This is the guy who's been kicked out of Singapore. He's been kicked out of Denmark.
Hang on. Getting kicked out of Singapore is not very difficult.
No, but let's be real.
Denmark, I'll give you Denmark.
Let's look at the things that this man has said. He said that homosexuals are worse than animals. You know, why is this man given such a prominent feature on the London Underground, and yet, you know, we can't have adverts for McDonald's or something like that? It is absolutely ridiculous. It just shows yet again that the TfL is absolutely fearful of saying no to anything that is slightly Islamic because they don't want to be called Islamophobic. And that's what this story is really about.
Kate, is Sadiq Khan a hypocrite? I don't know why I'm even asking that question. Sorry, let me do that again. Kate, can you give me evidence that Sadiq Khan's a hypocrite?
Well, I think we talk about two-tier here. Well, it's even worse with Sadiq Khan. I think this plays into a deeper, more insidious question that goes even deeper than TfL, which is, quite frankly, we've become a hotbed for extremism in London, and it's absolutely not acceptable. We talk about international funding from states we don't agree with, etc., but we're allowed to let Iranian propaganda just run amok on our streets, and this is absolutely no different. I'm pleased Singapore and Denmark took the stance, but I also agree, Singapore, you can actually get kicked out for chewing gum, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So
I'll be honest with you, I think we should keep her.
No, I think Katie brings up a really good point here, is that London and the UK in general always seems to be where these people settle. And, you know, we seem to just be such a tolerant society that we're allowing the intolerant to run amok on our streets.
But we're
starting to see the devastating impact.
But, Pete, as you know full well, there was a time when this country, and by the way, I think we should apologise to places like France, where we had Islamic terrorists living in the country, plotting attacks on our European neighbours, and we allowed that to happen on the basis they wouldn't attack Britain. That was a lamentable deal.
Absolutely.
Algerians that were attacking Paris were living in London.
Oh, I thought that was awful, and I do think you're right that we should apologise for that. What I would say, though, is that I remember, I think it was about 2015, David Cameron made this speech saying that, you know, we're going to have a more muscular liberalism. In other words, we've got to kick these people out of the country. And then, as per usual, I was, we can't do that, it's Islamophobic, we can't do that, it's racist. Why are these people who are preaching such hate and sowing such division in our society allowed to be here? Kick them out.
But the other thing is, Andrew, we don't defend the moderates. I mean, I watch I don't watch the BBC. Let's rephrase that. If I watched the BBC, what I would find is time and time again, hate-filled extremists like Anjam Chowdhury, now in prison, were allowed to represent the Muslim community in Britain. The ordinary, moderate, decent people just get shoved out the way.
No, you're right. And it's also, as you get sort of white heterosexual males are also banned now.
That's right.
That sort of thing. And anything to do with hot dogs, the two are not connected. But
What's wrong with you? What is wrong with you?
You work on that basis. This is where it's all gone completely crazy, hasn't it?
It has indeed. Anyway, so he's burning dollars.
He's burning dollars.
I'm not so bothered about the burning dollar thing because it's supposed to be against the idea of interest.
It is. The idea is that money. You can't let money do nothing. That's the whole principle about Islam. Which you can. That's what they believe, and that's absolutely fine. You turn around. So earning money by doing nothing, which is effectively
usury, to use our.
There you go. So that's wrong. But it's the principle, isn't it? It's the hypocrisy where we go back, where you can't have your hot dogs, you can't have your cheese, but you can have your burning dollars and your Islamic bank.
And also women in bikinis. Sadiq wasn't keen on that. I'd love that to be a rumour. I'd love that to be a rumour.
I do think there's also another bit to this, is we seem to be creating an Islamic state within Britain now. That, you know, this kind of Islamification of the United Kingdom is starting to become very self-evident now. You know, we're starting to see it in our banking sector and right throughout society now. And I do think we kind of have to put a stop to this because It's how far are you willing to let this go? Are we willing to say Sharia courts are next on the list? Because it's not that big of a step that if you're allowing the finance stuff, then you allow something else, you allow something else. It's one of those kind of snowball
we allow Sharia courts now as independent arbitration. I have to say, I'm kind of quite in favour of it. The reason I'm in favour of it is it's the same reason that the Judge Rinder show exists.
Yes.
You and I can agree to arbitration by whatever mechanism we want, as long as it's a civil dispute.
Yeah, absolutely. And as long as you comply with the laws of the country that you're living in. I mean, that's the key to all of this.
But I think that's Pete's concern, is that we won't be doing that.
Yeah.
I have to say, I've said this a few times before, my niece is a privileged young person. She goes to a school called Bolton School, which is quite posh in Greater Manchester. But her coach drives through parts of Bolton where girls her age are sent for child marriage in Pakistan. They're British nationals as well, and we do nothing about it. OK, anyway, what's Sadiq Khan under fire for this week?
Well, many things, but the Islamic bank and advertising and burning dollars allowed on the tube when you can't have your hot dog.
That's absolutely correct. OK, so Katie, Health Secretary Wes Streeting says unemployed people should be given what to get them back to work?
Well, so there have been speculations about, throughout all governments about what do we do to get the unemployed back to work, etc. People used to say that Michael Gove was the great healer when he set about different things. But this is to do with the weight loss drugs, which are semaglutide drugs, essentially. Now, I think we might actually use them better to take the punch out of Labour's ego that they're currently having, that they think that this is the one-shot solution to absolutely everything, which is absolutely not the case.
Do you know what Jasper Carrot said about fat people?
What?
Oh, God. What they have to realise is that this hole is bigger than that one, right? It's got a bigger capacity.
I love such classy shows. It's got to be good,
But it's true, though. I mean, the reason why I'm fat is because I eat healthy food and wash it down with 10 pints of lager. I mean, the whole, my hormones. Or when I worked in Parliament, used to get, I've got a thyroid problem, I can't work. Oh, get off your lazy backside and stop eating pizzas.
I'm going to be quite controversial. I actually don't think this is a bad idea.
Why?
Because we've tried the whole encouraging exercise, we've tried the whole education thing, and it's simply not worked. Obesity costs the NHS about 11 billion quid. Oh, here we go.
Well, I'm not asking him how he lost all the weight. You can ask him. It's not in my contract, pal. Right, let's move on, Pete. So, you think Ozempic's a good idea, do you?
I do. And I'm not. This was all natural. Thank you very much. I don't get. You don't pay me.
That's what they all say.
Yeah.
You don't pay me enough.
Do you know Bernie Sanders has claimed that Ozempic is going to bankrupt Medicare?
Oh, well, I mean, it is...
Medicaid.
Yeah,
Whichever
Medicaid.
is
I mean, it is about, roughly, depending on the dosage, about £200 pop. Obviously...
Yeah. It's $1,700 a month in the United States of America.
Well, yes. So
it's not here.
I've worked with pharmaceutical companies previously, so I have a bit of an insight into what they do in order to get market access, etc., to increase uptake. The UK isn't a very sexy market.
Well, what do they do? What's your insight?
So they will put out these programs to make where it's such as getting unemployment down, etc., in order to basically make themselves look a bit better, make themselves look good, and then increase their uptake over the longer term. Because the issue with these jabs is if you don't make lifestyle changes after you get, or you stay on them forever, you then need to continually go on them because people...
Exactly the point. And this is called Mounjaro, is the name of this one. It's not Ozempic, it's a different one. And it's supposed to be the king of slimming jabs.
But isn't the slight problem, and I've interviewed medics before who say the big problem is you will lose both muscle and fat.
Well, yes, but that does actually come with any weight loss you have whatsoever.
Oh, I didn't know. I thought I'd be like Arnie. I'll be back.
But muscle is really important because if you actually... Because Because the next thing I like a muscle guy as much as anybody else. But...
I like a muscle guy as much as he does. What are you really saying that about your best chart?
I've only got one big muscle. Jaw.
No, but there is a serious aspect to this, that we have a huge productivity problem, we have a huge unemployment problem, and we have a huge, what they call the economically inactive. And, we've tried everything so far, so I don't really see what the problem is of trialling this. I think they want to give it a go in Greater Manchester. It's about 250,000 people, just to see whether it works over a 5-year period. I'm not really that opposed to it because The one thing I'm getting a little sick
Mind
and
you,
tired of.
Pete-
One second. I'm getting sick and tired of is this idea that we have one golden policy that suddenly fixes everything. I think we have to get away from that idea. Maybe we should just give something a try. I don't really
No,
think...
I've changed my mind about this.
Go on then.
Right, I've got to say to you, just think of the time when everyone who is unemployed is hot. Right? And then basically your lager and lime down the working men's club goes further than ever before. When all of those people that have nothing better to do other than sleep with me are suddenly unbelievable. Come on, baby! Come on! Fill your boots! Ah!
I love it. But it's 11 billion a year obesity costs on the NHS. The question is
I
this.
hate when they say NHS costs. Right, what they should do is they should excuse me from paying the tax. Don't treat me for being fat.
There you
Just
go.
excuse me the tax.
So, that's a good idea. Maybe that should be a policy as well. But the reality is exactly that. And Katie makes a brilliant point. You can't have your Katie and eat it because once you come off it, you're going to go back and you're going to start eating again. And the salad dodgers will carry on dodging that salad once they're off the injection.
Okay, so what did Frank Sidebottom West Streeting say? He does. He looks like the Sidebottom.
He does.
Right, okay. What did he say the unemployed should get to get them back to work?
He said that they should get the semaglutide weight loss inducing medications.
All right, love.
Back
He
into
didn't say That's certainly not what he said.
All right, love, calm it. I've got 3 weight loss jabs, not semi-glutoid, sodium hydroxide, paraglobin, or whatever the hell it was. Right. Okay, Pete.
Yeah.
Why are we asking him this one? Reform UK has broken House of Commons rules by selling what to fans?
Oh, they're going to love me again on the YouTube comments. And this is because I get to bash Reform again. They have been started selling £300 tours of Parliament, which is strictly prohibited under the...
It's too cheap, isn't it?
It's too cheap. No, and again, I think this one... Because Caroline Lucas got pulled up for this, I think, in
150
2020.
quid. She only
No,
charged
was
150.
Well, that's inflation for you.
Yeah.
Also, the cost of vegetarian meals is lower than the fillet steak.
That's true. But no, I suppose this is all linked in with Reform's need to professionalise the party. And, Nigel Farage has tried to do that.
Because they wouldn't have known that this was a breach of the rules, will they?
Well, a decent parliamentary advisor would have known.
Yeah, but I turned the job down.
Yeah, I said decent.
Hey!
But no, and this is the thing that I think Reform has been missing, is there's someone to catch these little mistakes, because obviously Reform are going to come under more scrutiny than any other political party because it's Nigel Farage and, the mainstream media don't like Reform and all of that. And I do have some sympathy with those arguments. But, at some point, you can't keep calling yourself a professional party and make these mistakes. I'll allow some teething errors, but this is quite a whopper,
But tours of Parliament's like being an escort.
Yeah.
Right? Or at least it was in my day. All you do is you go, right, you've got to pay for my dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant, but the tour's free.
Yeah.
No,
There you
easy
go.
enough.
That's much easier,
Easy enough. Well, I don't know about being an escort, obviously. but well, that's what I was told. No, neither customer nor provider. You can't make a joke about a lager and lime these days without people start thinking you're bribing the unemployed for sex. What a terrible world television and radio has gone to. Actually, it was worse in the past. Anyway, Pete, what has Reform UK done to break the rules?
As £300 tours of Parliament.
Bargain and correct. OK, to Andrew. Director General Tim Davie has banned which word from the BBC?
Well, he's banned all talent. I mean, that's the basic idea. So you've got to work on that, but we have no talent here. Thank you very much. This is the BBC. And the
Think that new show, Britain's got absolutely nobody of any value, but a fair number of paedophiles.
There you go. We've got no talent. And so that's the idea is that everybody's equal. So whether you're talented or untalented or anything else, and so people cannot abuse their position. So you can no longer refer to somebody as talent.
Oh, so yeah, I suppose. So now somebody's a presenter rather than talent.
Yes.
Because then other people are not. Oh, I might agree with that, Katie.
There you go. Katie, do you believe in talent?
Well, I believe in a talentless government at the moment,
Yes.
overseeing a talentless BBC, it may appear. So, yes, I think this is quite a good idea, given the scandals the BBC's gone through. And it always likes to promote equality, but actually doesn't.
But Katie, right. I'll be honest with you, I've never read a single document this company sent to me. But if I had actually read them, then I imagine what would not have appeared in the contract because it just would have been assumed to be true, was if you are a newsreader in our company, do not meet a paedophile on Instagram, go for a beer with him, and buy child pornography off him via WhatsApp. Now, forgive me for being naive, but A, that never crossed my mind to do that. But B, I don't think it crossed anybody else's mind. What the problem is, they are filling their building full of wrong-uns, and the lack of scrutiny. It's almost like the Reformation. The lack of scrutiny in this organisation is the problem, not words like talent.
Yeah, and I would say that goes across all publicly funded organisations. I don't think this is just a BBC problem. The lack of...
Yeah, but the BBC are quite bad, though.
Oh, yes.
Like, they're the experts. If there was a competition, the BBC would win.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
I mean, just on Savile alone.
Well,
you know.
Exactly, on Savile, on Hugh Edwards.
Yes.
Who, that will be a stain on,
I mean,
on the royal family.
Amazingly, we're making a bit of a joke, but Hugh Edwards wouldn't even make it into the top 5 worst offenders, would he, at the BBC?
Yeah.
I mean, he'd make it into the top 10, but he wouldn't make it into the top 5.
Yeah.
Are you going to name the other 9? Or you're worried about defamation? The interesting thing is this. Trust comes in on foot but leaves on horseback. What they're trying to do is to change the optics. So by saying we've got this policy, this is one aspect. I don't think it would have changed any of the historical things.
No, I don't.
By saying you're not talent, it would turn around, it might make people more depressed or whatever. So the reality is they're trying to say to the public, in the same way as you get a sheet of paper, which some people don't read, and you say, this is what you're not allowed to do. The reality is, that's about the optics. They're saying, this is what we do in these circumstances. We've got our policy,
But Pete,
and we no longer call them talent.
But Pete, that is about being untouchable. Yeah. It's got nothing to do with people not noticing. It's got nothing to do with the policy. If one of our presenters behaved like that in the dressing room, very simple, the producers would call security and they'd just be removed from the building immediately.
Yeah.
Like in any normal organisation.
Yeah, and I think this is the point, is that the issue isn't what words you use, it's the fact that people turned a blind eye and deliberately turned a blind eye. That is the bit that if you look at
what about also people being bullied by thinking, I can't say anything about this? I mean, how rotten does your organisation have to be when large numbers of people suspect child sex offences and not going on with your staff, going on in your building with your staff, and they go, don't say anything, I'll get into trouble. I'll get into trouble if I mention it.
Yeah, sorry, Katie, but this is entirely the problem with the BBC, and you mentioned it earlier. It is oversight. There is no real oversight to the BBC. They mark their own homework.
Yes.
It is absolutely abhorrent how we've allowed this system within the BBC to foster.
So what would you suggest they should do differently?
Scrap the BBC.
Scrap the BBC. Well, that's hardly a solution. We live
an institution. You cannot reform a rotten
We live in a
institution.
diseased information age when it's never been more important to have an independent broadcaster holding people's feet to the fire.
He's a communist. He's a communist.
It's true.
Red's under the bed. Red's under the bed.
But I have to say, abolishing the word talent is not going to solve the problem.
It's not.
And you're right. There's a question of trust. There's a question of the other bits and
I'll
pieces.
tell you what we'll do. If we don't call Hugh Edwards a talent, he'll no longer be a sex offender. I will tell you, I know psychiatric doctors who would dispute that as a method. But I'll tell you what, sit down, sir. All I have to say to you is, you've got no talent. Oh, no, I've stopped being a sex offender.
Yeah, but does this not tell you quite kind of how stereotypical the BBC has become? That they think, just change some words and everything will be better. It just shows that they don't take this issue seriously because they don't understand the gravity of the issue.
What I love is playing devil's advocate. It's not just changing a few words. They're trying to make it say, this is our policy. What they need to do
why don't they just put a policy? Don't either A, be a pedo, B, let a pedo get away with it, or C, cover up for a pedo.
There you go.
That would be those three.
Words
by the way, to our dear viewers and listeners, that advice just transcends. I mean, just in your everyday life, I just feel like, just don't.
Just don't.
And
the opposite of night.
What happened? The BBC get hundreds of complaints. This is what they said. They get hundreds of complaints every week. And what they need to do is make sure they've got a clear policy. And they say, this is the policy that we've got. You're right. What we do, we pick up on one little aspect of it. Abolishing the word talent makes the whole thing sound nonsensical. What they need to do is a very clear policy so we can restore that trust. Trust comes in on foot and leaves on horseback, as I always say.
Well,
that's what the BBC... I do.
I say about 3 times. is that? What is that?
It's got to be good. It's always
Point to the camera.
Camera 3. It's got to be good. They know what's happening. It's good. The reality is exactly
I'd love to see him in court.
Just
a theatrical.
I'll produce my next witness.
Just leaves on horseback. Oh, shut up. Shut up, Eborn. Get on with it. OK, so what has Tim Davie banned at the BBC?
Talent.
Is absolutely correct.
That was The Woke That Was. Continues after the break. That was The Woke That Was with Andre Walker.
So, Katie, Transport Secretary Louise Haigh has agreed to give train guards a £300 bonus every time they do what?
Work. Quite frankly, it seems like a lot of these heavily radicalised unions have basically run roughshod over consecutive governments. So we've just allowed it to the fact that instead of you working your full hours, you have to be paid extra to work on certain days. I'm sorry, there are 9-to-5 jobs. If you want a 9-to-5 job, you don't go into certain industries. End of discussion. Like, for instance, you don't come up on the television, for instance. It's not a 9-to-5 industry.
No, just do 1 hour. That's it.
Yes, exactly. That's what we do.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
I spend hours prepping for this.
When does that happen?
Never.
You don't read anything.
why I'm here.
Never. Never. I don't know. I buy the drinks afterwards.
You do.
Yeah. No, but I think you bring up a really good point there, Katie, that, the trade union here, the RMT and all the rest of them, they have run roughshod over multiple governments, but this government just seems to be like hand in glove with them. Louise Haigh has, let's be honest, has gone rogue multiple times when dealing...
Rather than DP World going.
Yes, exactly. But,
Now, the big problem is, Katie, you've not quite got this right.
Oh, Katie.
Because you've said... so the bonus is for working, but I want you to be a bit more specific than that.
Working specifically on weekends, especially on Saturdays. Now, I would quite
No,
like...
still
Five.
wrong.
It's
5 days
It's
a
a
week?
5. That's your 5 a week. A 5 days.
Yes, because they try and split it over
Yes.
a number of days. And we have this in other professions such as nursing, etc. But nursing is far more important than these overpaid, absolute, stupidly... held on a pedestal by the Labour Party train drivers.
All you have to do if you drive a train, so you have to push that, what's it called, dead man's wheel or whatever.
The dead man's wheel, you have to push it.
No, I forget.
You don't push your wheel.
I forget exactly what it's called, but there's a pedal under your feet.
Yes.
That if you're
And
incapacitated,
you have to do that, so
yeah,
you're
if
not.
you're incapacitated, you take your feet off and the train will stop. But apart from that, you just put your feet down and go.
No, but you have to blow your whistle occasionally.
No, you don't. Dude.
Come on.
You don't have to blow a whistle anymore.
You love to have your whistle. You've got to.
Why are we doing that to them, dude?
You love it. That's one of the bonuses. That's the reason they could do it. In addition to 300 quid.
Oh, you could go past Francis Bourgeois.
Those are the best videos ever. I love it.
What's he say? It's thrashing.
It's a joke.
Hellfire.
He's brilliant. Oh, I love those videos. Fantastic.
Anyway.
My mate said they saw him at Clapham Junction
Oh, did
Station
they?
and he just wasn't bothered about the train.
I couldn't care. No, it's all an act. He hates trains.
But-
It's gonna be-
I don't think he hates them.
He doesn't. He loves
try
them.
and drag it back to the question.
What's the question in all
You're
this?
welcome,
Apparently.
producer.
Apparently.
There is a big problem here for the Labour Party, and that is optics, yet again.
Optics?
Whilst they're taking away the winter fuel allowance, they are giving £300 bonuses to train drivers. I mean, come on, at some point this government has to get itself into gear in terms of how it's going to present itself.
How do you get a train into gear?
That would be good, wouldn't it? They don't have gears, do they?
No, they just all they do is
I'm pretty sure they have gears.
they get
They
this
don't
hand.
have gears. Of course they don't have gears. You don't have to do that with your stick
sure there must
coming
be
up to a
some-
junction. What's that about?
I don't know.
They don't-
I
they
don't
don't-
get paid 300 quid a month.
You have a dead man's wheel. That's what you have. He told you.
Look, the reality is you could automate the trains and they'd be much
Can.
better.
All of these trains will be automated. You don't need drivers. And if they ask for too much money, AI, which is going to rule all of our lives, will take over a lot quicker.
By the way, you were completely wrong about your advice to me about my intellectual property problem.
What was that? What was your
Right,
never wrong.
So
What was your
I
intellectual
worked for a
property
television channel when I was a teenager,
Yes.
and I used to sign a form that said they could use my likeness in any way across the universe by methods invented or not invented.
Yes. Well, fight over the black hole.
But I wasn't 18.
Oh, well, I didn't know you weren't 18. Said he.
So
That's a line he uses.
So to the television company that's attempting to create an AI me Just have that. You've lost now, haven't you?
Did your parents not advise you on that
My
contract?
parents didn't sign anything.
Oh, good for you too. There we are. Fill in on the facts. So you're quite right. You cannot enter into a contract unless you're of age and work on that premise. So you're
Well,
right.
there we go. That's free legal advice.
That's free, not free. What do you mean? Who said it was free?
It's like watching a documentary by Uber Butler. Okay, anyway, so what was it? No, Katie, I think we're going to give you this wrong. Because you said...
Five. Say five. Say
What
five.
has-
Say
what
five.
has, what
Five.
has Louise Haigh said she's going to give £300 to train guards to do?
If they work 5 days a week. Oh my goodness, what a shocking
Is
thought.
absolutely correct. Pete,
Yes.
15 Caribbean nations are demanding how much from the UK in compensation for its role in slavery?
Well, they're demanding roughly about £200 billion of Britain's role in the transatlantic slave trade. However, some estimates go up to 19 trillion. So, 200 billion seems quite cheap, really, on the end of it. But no, this is to do with the upcoming Heads of Government Summit for the Commonwealth nations. And it is yet again another boring argument about who's to blame for the slave trade and should we all pay for it and all the rest of it. The correct answer is none of us should pay for it. None of us were involved in it. None of us owned a slave. None of us. And
You're
it is
so wrong on this
it's
because
absolutely
there's a
ridiculous,
glorious
is it not?
precedent. The glorious precedent because the Vikings, what did they do to us? The Romans. We could follow that precedent, go all the way back. We'd knock on Scandinavia's door because that's got a lot of money.
Yes.
We'll speak to the Italians. Get off
French.
the grass, and we'll have all that sort of stuff. So we should absolutely go for billions, and with inflation and everything, that would solve all our
Everybody,
problems.
the big problem is
Yes.
when they say somebody says they're a descendant of a slave, everybody is
Yes,
a descendant of a
absolutely.
slave. There are even including every royal, is a descendant of a slave. Admittedly, the majority of their descendants weren't slaves, but they are descended from slaves.
And Christians used to be thrown to the lions. What about compensation for that?
Yeah.
I find it absolutely ridiculous. But I have to say, I mean, I saw this bloke who had a big house as a result of his family being slave masters. And I thought he was completely idiotic because he was talking about, oh, maybe I should sell it or whatever. What he should actually have said is the following. It's open to the public. I don't actually live in the damn thing, right? And it doesn't make any profit. I mean, the reality is the way of unpicking all these things is completely impossible. But I will say one thing. Richard Drax and the Drax estate, I don't think he can defend owning a slave estate in, where is it? It's not Jamaica, is it Barbados?
Barbados, yeah. So it's actually the Prime Minister of Barbados, because they're kind of spearhead of this initiative of these 15 nations. And they're all about electing the new Secretary General of the Commonwealth.
I'll give you a bonus point, Pete, if you can tell me who Barbados elected as their new president.
Oh, no idea.
The governor that the Queen had appointed as governor. That's a major change.
But I've got to say, the bigger threat isn't the king. It's actually, as per usual, David Lammy.
Yes.
Because David Lammy always brings up that he's a descendant of Caribbean slaves and, he's headed... And they're really pushing him, to really lead this forward within the cabinet. Now, Number 10 has shut this down, but as we say, it's not going anywhere, this argument, for a very long time. And my big fear is we've already seen them give away the Chagos Islands. We've already seen this kind of capitulation to the woke agenda by this government. So could we see some movement on this issue? And my fear is give an inch and we're paying 200 billion at some point. And I'm very scared about this, actually, because of the precedent this government could set.
But Lammy would be in favour of it, wouldn't he? Because there is an element, and I've seen this with immigration, I've seen this with international bodies. There are elements within the Labour Party, and I lament this fact because the Labour Party was a great force for good, as the trade union movement was in counties like Lancashire and Yorkshire, where we're from. But there is no doubt there are elements within the Labour Party that want the United Kingdom to fail. They believe that there cannot be global socialism as long as the United Kingdom remains a free, independent and financially viable nation.
Yeah, absolutely. And these are insidious forces, and we should make no bones about it. People think everything left with Jeremy Corbyn. It did not. We have put very radical people on this front bench that Keir Starmer is having a really tough time controlling. But back to the reparations point. Are they going to go to the African nations that now exist and ask them to pay reparations?
Yeah.
These slaves weren't just picked up by the vessels that went there. Also, the reason that the global slave trade was put to an end was because of this country.
Yes.
And
no, hang on. Katie, I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to stop you there because I think that whilst you have... I think you've got the argument right, and I agree with you. There is an element to what you just said which I think is dangerous. The slave trade is bigger now than it was during that period. The point is, it is now confined largely within Africa.
Well,
I mean, Bangladesh also has a large number of slaves, which admittedly is in Asia. But I argue, personally, that part of the reason why we make such a big thing about the transatlantic slave trade is because I think obviously it was more organised than most slavery now, but also it gives an opportunity for people to hold, bluntly, white people to blame for the ills of the world.
Well, exactly. And I actually think that is deeply racist, but not for the point you would think. I think it's because they don't allow the full spectrum of human positivity and human evil to the rest of the world where there aren't white people. And I think that is insidious. And you're treating other nations and infantilising them like children.
And the reality is history is ugly. And you're working on that sort of basis. And you're right to call out there are slaves in today's society, which we need to shine a spotlight on.
There are. I'll be honest with you, Andrew, and I'm sorry to say this, but there are diplomats in the United Kingdom who use their diplomatic power to use slaves in London.
Yes.
Forget the rest of it. Now, I have to say to you, what upsets me more than anything else, and forgive me for saying this so many times, these young people who film themselves pulling down the statue of somebody who wasn't a slave trader, historically, with a phone made by a 9-year-old in a Chinese Laogai.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
And this is the thing that has annoyed me no end since we this kind of resurfacing of these kind of issues is I wish we would put that much effort and that much emphasis on ending what you've just mentioned there, as we did about talking about something that literally ended 200 years ago. You know, we have to start dealing with realpolitik and start dealing with the issues that we have today. Like you said, we have maid markets, we have the slavery happening here in London and in the UK, and more people seem to be concerned about something that happened 200 years ago than what's happening today.
I'm also very sorry to say this, but if you want to get ugly, let's get ugly. The reality is that, admittedly, against their will, the people of Jamaica took the land of Jamaica off the original Jamaicans. There are no Africans from the West Indies originally. Now, what do we want to do? Do we now want to say perhaps that Angola should pay back the indigenous people of Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago?
Or go to America and see where the Native Americans are.
Yeah.
See what's happened there.
Well, would we go to Alabama and say, look, I'm very sorry, but whilst the white people took this land, you're now living on it as well, and it's time to... What upsets me more than anything else is the freeze framing in history of this one moment. You hear it all the time. You hear it. It has to be said with people who are Islamic nationalists. The minute any Muslim has ever lived in a particular area, they call it Islamic land. But anyway, so I think that what we should do is the 200 billion should be paid to the Caribbean who should pay compensation back to Africa for what they did. That should be 200 billion as well. And Africa, because they involved us in the slave trade and we had to end it, should pay the 200 back to Britain. There we go. Everybody gets compensation.
And then go for the Vikings and the Romans.
Yeah, that's right.
With inflation.
If your name ends in son, I'm coming for you. Son, because you're a Viking. Because you're a Viking.
Listen up, son.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, how much are they demanding?
£200 billion.
Bargain.
Yeah, good luck with that. It's absolutely correct.
That was The Woke That Was. Continues after the break. That was The Woke That Was with Andre Walker.
OK, Andrew, the NHS has banned doctors and nurses from using which phrase because it might upset people who have lost their sight?
Well, it's the blind leading the blind, and I think we should turn a deaf ear to it, because I think the reality... I think I'm here all week.
That's a shame.
That's what's happening. So they're turning around, because it will offend people who are partially sighted or have to wear glasses every now and again, and that sort of stuff. So
are we allowed to say... Are we allowed to say in the kingdom of the blind, the one-eyed man is king?
No, well, that's probably true.
That's probably the worst.
You're right. So highlighting any disability on that sort of basis is difficult, you know. And I think this is what's Dr. Andrew...
So for a bonus point,
yes.
Does anybody know what the biggest comment made on last week's YouTube show was? It was asking whether you were blind, Andrew.
Oh, was that right?
Because you had those dark glasses on.
Yes, it's true. It's true. It's because I had this funny red eye.
You can part your glasses on.
I look like a gangster. I look like the guy who used to do that really expensive steak. Well, remember the salt?
Salt Bay.
No, you're thinking of Emu.
That's Emu.
That's Emu. You've got like one impersonation, haven't you? You sort of go from Emu to this guy who does the salt.
But that's how he does it.
And that's sooty without
I'll tell you what.
working.
I'll tell you what. For 800 quid,
Yes.
he'd have to do more than
Oh,
that.
What? Thank you.
That was quite rude, Andrew.
I thank you.
Andrew, we're going to move on. Go
Yes,
on.
I
What
think
is
we
it?
should. It's the blind leading the blind.
Is absolutely correct. Katie, Keir Starmer has banned a portrait of which Prime Minister from number 10 this week?
Well, as we've been hearing, it's many portraits he's taken out, but this one specifically is about Gladstone. And a lot of, as we were talking earlier, about these woke university students that like tearing down statues, they've often had it in for Gladstone.
Why?
Because they're morons, fundamentally, because they haven't, in fact, opened a history book. These people that tell everyone, oh, open a book, oh, you need to read, they can't, in fact, read themselves.
Be kind.
What I found quite interesting was that in this, it's meant to be about the redecoration of Downing Street, etc., which we heard enough about when Carrie Johnson was
That's absolutely right.
Carrie doesn't live here anymore.
No, she doesn't. So they've torn down the wallpaper.
Yes.
And one
Interior
of the...
resigns.
Exactly.
I remember the headline.
So... And Keir Starmer's excuse, especially for removing the portrait of Margaret Thatcher,
Maggie
from
Thatcher.
the study, was that he doesn't like being stared at by
Yes.
portraits. Now, you are the Prime Minister. You should be used to
If
being
he doesn't
stared
like being stared at, that'd be so good. Like I'd walked past him in the corridor.
Yeah.
But the reality is, and Katie alluded to this, Pete, there's a lot of this going on. You know, wokery, tearing down statues, you know, capitulation to the EU, obsessions with slavery. A lot of this stuff that we believed idiotically was confined to universities. Then we discovered that corporate Britain, HR departments, or as I prefer to call them, human remains, they are full of it as well. Hello to all the...
Well, I don't want a gesture.
But we now know the leadership of the Labour Party completely agree with all this stuff, don't we?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. And this is the thing, if you ever wanted to know what it would look like if a student union ran the country, we're living through.
That's absolutely right.
This is what it is. It is amateur politics by amateur people running around doing whatever their little brains want them to do. And, you know, it might not seem like a big thing like removing a couple of paintings, but what those paintings and those people represent is very important. You know, they represent the state, they represent Britain. And, you know, just removing it is kind of whitewashing our history. And, yeah, as Andrew said, history is often ugly and it's brutal and it's not often the nicest thing. But I think it actually shows a grown-up nation that says, like, yeah, OK, we were involved in that, but this is how we made things better. This is how we progressed as a nation.
Katie, I just want to ask you, because your former Conservative advisor, were you advisor when they did well or badly?
Well, thankfully.
Okay. So here's my question to you on a serious note, because it's the first time you've appeared.
Yes.
What on earth should the new leader of the Conservative Party, whoever that is, or indeed what should any of the opposition parties... Whichever one it is. Right. OK, it's Robert Jenrick versus Kemi Bain-Nog. OK, but what should... the opposition parties now do in order to defeat the Labour Party?
Oh.
No.
Maybe that's my new job.
It is.
OK, my desk is now broken, apparently.
Oh, that's
What
good.
is wrong? What is wrong with the desk? Come on, get the desk. Fix it. Well, that must be that thing that does that, right?
I put in there, that's it.
No, don't put it in anywhere.
It's like a montage.
OK. I think what we're going to do now is go to a break. Back in a mo.
That was The Woke That Was. Continues after the break. That was The Woke That Was with Andre Walker.
Welcome back. I think that I've managed to get down. Hide. Welcome back. So that was The Woke That Was. Just cut to Pete for a second. Out of the way. OK, Pete, talk about something. Talk about something.
I can't remember what we were talking about.
Just talk about anything. Talk about anything.
Thank you.
Kate, if you were any good at electrical engineering...
Shocking.
No, the question that I was going to ask, and welcome back, everyone. The question I was going to ask was... Oh, I'm puffed out. The question I was going to ask... Get out of it. Right. That wasn't a rude joke. Kate, if you were the leader of the opposition now, what would you do to try and beat Keir Starmer?
But with a stick.
Yes, preferably. A woke stick, you know. Well, I think you just have to be competent at this stage. Competent, you have to have a clear message that you keep repeating. People say politicians don't ever answer the question. And if we think back to David...
Give me an example of it.
Well, she's not answering my one, though.
Exactly.
If we think back to the example of David Cameron when he first came in, you could repeat what their message was, and that got through. Whereas Keir Starmer and the Conservative Party also just seem to be in complete.
Yeah, but Katie, isn't the
I think
problem?
that's an interesting point.
Katie, isn't part of the problem though with that? I mean. Margaret Thatcher once said that she had no respect for Neil Kinnock because she said it was a fundamentally disreputable project to attempt to persuade people to vote Labour despite what Labour would do to the country. So the idea is to pretend Labour is something different to what it is. I want a politician to admit what they actually believe in and what they want to do.
Absolutely.
Keir Starmer, had he told the British public what he was going to do in office, he might have even lost to Rishi Sunak, which would have been a real success story for utter political failure.
But the thing is, people don't want to be told what people think. They want to be told what they think. That's the issue in this country. They want to...
You were doing your inner Maggie then, weren't you? You were very good.
I think he brings up a really interesting point about why I think the Starmer government has collapsed so rapidly, and that is the lack of message discipline. In opposition, they were the most...
No!
No. Let me make the point. In opposition, they were the most regimented, on point, where nobody strayed from the line. Everybody knew exactly their points to say. They may not have answered the question, but they stuck to the point. Now they've got into government. Everybody has gone everywhere. The wheels have come off the car.
Yeah, but surely, Pete, look, I've got respect for you in your professional competency, but you can't tell me that the problem here isn't that the Labour Party, the message discipline was that the Labour Party successfully persuaded the British public to vote for them despite their own best interests. So this government is not in the best interests of the public. And the problem now is the Labour Party's policies and their people. Message discipline is what got us in the mess.
And the lies, the weasel words.
One second. But the point is, message discipline allows you to sound competent on bad policy. If everybody is singing from the same hymn sheet, the hymn doesn't really matter. If everybody's singing different parts of it at the wrong point, that's
I mean, I agree, Pete, I agree with you, but surely the outcome needs to be good governance.
Well, you'd like to think so, but from a political party and from a kind of actual
strategic
and the hymn always matters.
Unfortunately,
you can't say as long as they sing the same song, it doesn't matter.
If everybody is singing from the same hymn sheet, you can
I mean,
have
I have
the
to
worst
say,
policy in the world,
I have to say,
but you sound competent while doing it.
I have to say to you, I think most teenagers could explain to you why Gordon Brown's perpetual boom theory was a bad idea, which is that you take an economic boom and stoke it with government spending to create a perpetual boom. But he called it ending boom and bust economics, and people did buy it.
Yeah.
Well,
even though it was stupidity. It was utter stupidity.
Well, yes, and to build further on Peter's point, the issue both parties have is they have a severe lack of talent behind the scenes.
Talent? You can't mention the word talent. BBC.
No.
Tim Davies
This is the first time. This is the first time we've made an outbound call. No, shut up. Outbound call. Yes. Hello, is that the BBC switchboard?
We're so sorry.
Hello, is that the BBC switchboard?
It will never happen again.
Can we speak? Can you put me through to the sex offender unit? Yes. You're not going to believe this. Katie Frank has used the word talent.
Shame on you, woman. Shame.
That getting thrown out of the BBC.
Well, exactly.
Other things won't. But OK, so now to Katie, obviously, which Prime Minister was banned from number 10?
William Gladstone.
William Gladstone is absolutely correct. Pete.
Yes.
Transport Secretary Louise Haigh, didn't even know who she was until this morning, has lost Britain how much money after criticising P&O ferries?
Oh, this is an outstanding story where the Transport Secretary Louise Haigh, she's about yay big with bright pink hair. You can imagine her on a Corbynista march. She cost the country about £1 billion. And this was from a major investment. The Keir Starmer's rather flop of an investment summit because her...
The only investment summit where they got less money at the end than when they started.
But no, so basically, Louise Haigh and Angela Rayner had a pop at P&O Ferries, calling them a rogue operator, rogue employer and all the rest of it. And this company, P&O, is owned by DP World.
DP, you can't mention DP.
And I was waiting for that. And They pulled this £1 billion investment from, which was going to be about expanding one of the big ports up near Gatwick and all the rest of it. And then they said they weren't going to attend the conference. They did in the end, and there was a bit of toing and froing. But this shows yet again that, this kind of amateur level of, maybe don't have a go at the company that you're asking for £1 billion from.
And
I've just realised something.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say this. It stands for Dubai Ports, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
I know it. What did you think it meant?
Hey, by the way, bonus point.
Yes?
What does P&O stand for?
I don't say that, but that's even worse.
Peninsula and Oriental.
It does, and that's what it used to
I
be
didn't
called
know
because it was over there and over there. The worst thing about the summit is the person who was absent was the most important person to invite,
Elon
and that was Elon Musk. And I was talking to his father, Errol, regular on my show, and the reality is exactly...
My mum, who's a nurse.
I give you the line every week. I give you the line every week. The reality is that how can you not invite the most famous, the de facto president of the United States?
No.
I'm turned around on that sort of basis.
What makes it even worse is the government's reason for not inviting him.
Yes.
Is apparently he doesn't have enough money.
Hey!
That was literally what one of the...
Neither does Louise Haigh these days.
Yeah,
No, but what makes it even better about Louise Haigh is that she, the Keir Starmer was forced to come out and use the most dreaded words. I have full confidence in her position.
Yes,
She better start updating her CV because we all know in the political world, if someone's got their full confidence in you, you're out by the end of the week.
OK, Pete, how much did Louise Haigh lose at the investment summit?
It's £1 billion.
Unbelievable, £1,000 million. OK, thank you so much to my panel tonight. Thank you so much to Andrew Eborn. Thank you so much to Pete Barnes. But the winner, of course, despite the fact she was the only person to get the question wrong, we're not fair or egalitarian or reasonable here. So the winner is Katie Franks.
Hey,
Katie!
high five in a
Katie,
sort of way.
Katie, your prize is a Wetherspoons meal up to a maximum value of £9.95. Which one are you going to pick?
Oh,
I think it's burger and a pint.
Yeah.
OK, until next time, goodbye.